Have you noticed how the world seems to be vibrating with a strange, quiet tension lately? Have you felt that the money in your pocket buys a little less every single week, despite what the official inflation numbers tell you? There is a massive tectonic shift occurring in the global financial architecture that is being ignored by the mainstream media, but it is the most significant event of our lifetime. We are witnessing the deployment of a secret financial weapon that has effectively rendered the US dollar useless in the eyes of the world's most powerful emerging economies. There are many theories about the future of global trade and the end of American hegemony, but today I will present 3 key theories that explain how this weapon works, who built it, and why the dollar as we know it is already a relic of the past. Do you understand what happens to a superpower when its primary export, its currency, is no longer accepted at the global table? Why is this happening in 2026? And more importantly, how does it affect your ability to survive the coming economic storm? Guess what happens next when the exorbitant privilege of the reserve currency finally meets its mathematical limit? We are no longer talking about a hypothetical collapse. We are talking about a completed transition. To understand this weapon, we must first understand the concept of financial sovereignty. For 80 years, the global economy has operated on a system of permission. If you wanted to trade oil, gold, or grain, you had to use the US dollar. This meant you had to use the American banking system, follow American rules, and subject yourself to American sanctions. But imagine you are playing a game where the referee can suddenly decide to freeze your score and kick you off the field because they don't like who you are talking to on the sidelines. Would you keep playing that game, or would you look for a new field with a new set of rules? This is exactly what is happening right now. The weapon is not a bomb or a virus. It is a decentralized, commodity-backed digital ledger that bypasses the Western banking system entirely. Think about the internet for a second. Before the internet, if you wanted to send a message, you had to use a centralized post office or a telegram service. They could read your mail, delay it, or lose it. Then came the internet, a decentralized network where data flows freely without a central master. The secret financial weapon being deployed today is the Internet of Value. It allows nations to trade billions of dollars worth of resources instantly, peer-to-peer, without ever touching a dollar or a US-controlled server. Why is this important? Because the dollar's value is derived from its necessity. If it is no longer necessary for trade, it becomes just another piece of paper backed by a mountain of debt. Do you understand the danger here? A currency that is not needed is a currency that is not valued. Let's look at our first theory, the mBridge protocol and the end of SWIFT. For decades, the SWIFT system has been the nerve center of global finance. It is the messaging system that banks use to move money across borders. Because the US controls SWIFT, it controls the flow of global trade. However, in 2026, a new system called mBridge has reached critical mass. Developed by the Bank for International Settlements alongside the central banks of China, Thailand, the UAE, and Hong Kong, mBridge allows for instant cross-border payments using central bank digital currencies. It is faster, cheaper, and completely invisible to Western regulators. This is the invisibility cloak of finance. When a nation can buy oil in its own currency and settle the transaction in seconds without using a single dollar, the dollar's utility drops to zero. Guess what happens to the trillions of dollars currently held in foreign reserves when they are no longer needed to pay for oil? They come flooding back to the US, causing a hyperinflationary event that will make the 1970s look like a picnic. This leads us to a fascinating sociological experiment known as the social proof of value. Why do we believe a $100 bill is worth $100? It's not the paper, it's the collective agreement. If everyone at a party suddenly decides that the blue poker chips are worth more than the red ones lose their power instantly. In the global party of economics, the BRICS nations have just decided that the red chips, the dollars, are no longer the prize. They are moving toward the gold-linked digital unit. This isn't just a new currency, it's a new way of measuring reality. They are linking their digital trade tokens to physical commodities like gold, oil, and rare earth minerals. Do you understand the difference? The dollar is backed by faith and credit, which are invisible. The new weapon is backed by physics and chemistry, which are tangible. Why is this a death blow to the dollar? Because you cannot print more gold, but you can print an infinite amount of debt. Let's use an analogy to make this clearer. Imagine you are in a desert, and you have a suitcase full of desert credits given to you by the local king. You use them to buy water from the only well in town. But one day, a traveler arrives and builds a solar-powered atmospheric water generator. He doesn't want your credits. He wants to trade his water for your boots or your watch. Suddenly, the king's credits are useless because the monopoly on water has been broken. The US dollar has been the desert credit of the world, and the well was the global energy market. The new financial weapon is the atmospheric water generator, a technology that allows nations to generate their own economic water without the king's permission. Do you see how the power shifts? This brings us to our second theory, the petro-yuan and the commodity loop. For 50 years, the petrodollar was the secret sauce of American prosperity. Saudi Arabia agreed to sell oil only in dollars, and in exchange, the US provided military protection. This created a permanent global demand for dollars. But in 2026, that agreement has effectively expired. The secret weapon here is the integration of the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange with the digital yuan. Now, a country like Brazil can sell iron ore to China, receive digital yuan, and immediately use that yuan to buy oil from the Middle East or gold from the international market. The dollar is bypassed. The loop is closed. Why is this important to you? Because the only reason your lifestyle is affordable is that the rest of the world is forced to hold your debt to buy energy. If they stop holding the debt, the cost of your morning coffee, your gasoline, and your smartphone will double, then triple, then quadruple. Are you prepared for a world where the US is just another country with a failing currency? Let's look at another historical experiment, the assignats of the French Revolution. The revolutionary government issued paper money backed by seized lands. At first, it worked, but then they printed too many, and people realized the land couldn't be easily exchanged for bread. The currency collapsed. The US dollar is the modern assignat. It is backed by the American economy. But as the world seizes its own trade routes and creates its own financial weapons, the backing becomes irrelevant. The BRICS nations have built a digital ark to survive the coming flood of devalued dollars. They aren't just trying to compete with the US, they are rendering the US irrelevant to their survival. Do you understand the psychological impact of being irrelevant? For a century, the US has been the protagonist of the global story. In 2026, the world is moving on to a new book. This is what we call systemic decoupling. It's like a divorce where one spouse has already moved out, opened a new bank account, and changed the locks before the other spouse even realizes there is a problem. The US is the spouse left in the big, expensive house with all the bills and no income. The secret weapon is the new bank account. It is the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, CIPS, and the Digital Silk Road. These technologies have created a parallel universe of finance. If you are inside the parallel universe, you are safe. If you are stuck in the old dollar universe, you are watching your wealth evaporate in real time. Why is the media not telling you this? Because the people who own the media are the ones trying to get their money into the parallel universe before the door closes for good. Guess what happens to those who are left behind? Have you ever wondered why there is such a push for central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, in the West right now? It is a desperate attempt to build a digital fence around the remaining dollar users. They want to make sure that when the dollar crashes, you are trapped in a system where they can control your spending. The secret weapon of the East is about liberation from the dollar. The response of the West is about the total digital incarceration of the citizen. Do you see the two paths diverging? One path leads to commodity-backed trade and national sovereignty. The other leads to programmable social credit money and the final loss of privacy. Let's use an analogy for the debt ceiling. Imagine you have a credit card with no limit, but the bank tells you that you must promise to pay it back someday. You keep buying luxury cars and fancy dinners. The US has been using its reserve status as a credit card with no limit, but the secret weapon has effectively told the world's waiters to stop accepting the card. The world is moving toward settlement in kind. They want real assets. They want copper. They want lithium. They want grain. They want gold. They do not want more entries in a digital database at the Federal Reserve. Do you understand the shift from financialism to materialism? This brings us to the most dangerous part of the transition, the liquidity trap. When a currency loses its status as a reserve, all the stored value value in the world begins to seek an exit. It's like a crowded theater where someone smells smoke. Everyone moves toward the exit at once. The secret weapon is the new, wider, safer exit that the BRICS have built for themselves. But the exit for the average American or Western European citizen is narrow and blocked by regulations and taxes. In 2026, we are seeing the gold premium explode in Eastern markets, while the Western paper gold markets are being exposed as a fraud. There are more paper claims to gold in London and New York than there is physical metal in the vaults. What happens when the world asks for its gold and the vaults are empty? The empty vaults are the final stage of the illusion. When the realization hits that the gold isn't there, the paper gold market collapses, and with it, the last shred of credibility for the dollar-based financial system. This leads us to our third theory, the sovereign wealth reset. In 2026, we are witnessing a phenomenon where the secret weapon is being used to revalue global assets in real time. By moving to a commodity-linked digital ledger, the BRICS nations are effectively saying that the old prices, the ones set on Wall Street, are fake. They are establishing a physical price discovery mechanism. Do you understand what happens to your stock portfolio or your retirement account when the global market decides the currency they are denominated in is no longer the standard for value? Why is this important? Because wealth is never truly destroyed. It is simply transferred. The secret weapon is the vacuum cleaner that is sucking the value out of the Western financialized economy and depositing it into the productive economies of the East. Let's look at a historical experiment, the tallies of the British Exchequer. For centuries, the British government used notched pieces of wood called tallies to represent debt and taxes. It worked as long as the people believed the king would honor the wood. But eventually, the system became too complex. The wood was replaced by paper, and the paper was replaced by digital entries. Every time we move further away from the physical reality of value, the risk of a reset increases. The BRICS nations have returned to the tally, but in a digital, encrypted, and gold-backed form. They have combined the ancient wisdom of hard money with the futuristic power of the blockchain. This is the synthetic hegemony that just rendered the dollar useless. Guess what happens to a civilization that builds its house on paper when it meets a civilization that builds its house on stone? Think about the Triffin dilemma we discussed in previous sessions. The US had to provide the world with dollars, but in doing so, it had to run massive deficits. In 2026, the dilemma has reached its logical conclusion. The deficits have become so large that the trust required to hold the dollar has evaporated. The secret weapon is the alternative that finally allows the world to say no to the deficit-funded American lifestyle. This is the hard landing that economists have feared for 40 years, but it isn't a landing for everyone. For the nations using the mBridge protocol and the commodity loop, it is a new takeoff. They are decoupling their destiny from the sinking ship of Western debt. Do you understand the gravity of being on the ship without a lifeboat? How does this affect your daily life today? It means that savings in the traditional sense are now a liability. If you save in a currency that is being rendered useless by a global financial weapon, you are essentially saving ice cubes in a warming room. The secret weapon has changed the rules of the game. How does this affect your daily life today? It means that savings in the traditional sense are now a liability. If you save in a currency that is being rendered useless by a global financial weapon, you are essentially saving ice cubes in a warming room. The secret weapon has changed the rules of the game. To survive, you must move from financial assets to hard assets. You must move from promises to possessions. Have you noticed the rise of barter communities and local currencies in your own neighborhood? This is the grassroots response to the same phenomenon. People are instinctively looking for a way to trade that doesn't involve the failing global system. Let's use an analogy for inflationary pressure. Imagine you are in a room and the ceiling is slowly lowering. You don't notice it at first, but eventually you have to stoop, then kneel, then lie flat on the floor. The lowering ceiling is the loss of the dollar's purchasing power as the world stops using it. The secret weapon is the button that the BRICS nations have pressed to speed up the motor. They want the ceiling to hit the floor in the West so they can buy up the world's remaining resources for pennies on the dollar. or rather for grams of gold on the dollar. Do you see the predatory nature of this transition? The elite in the East are doing to the West what the West has done to the rest of the world for a century. It is a geopolitical reversal. Consider the digital yuan experiment. Many people think it's just about domestic control in China, but its true power is international. It is the first major currency to have programmable trade built into its core. In 2026, a smart contract can be written where a shipment of grain from Argentina to Egypt is automatically paid for in digital yuan the moment the ship enters the Suez Canal. No banks, no delays, no dollar fees. This automation of trust is the secret weapon that has made the traditional banking system obsolete. Why is this a threat? Because the US banking system earns billions in rent just by being the middleman. If the middleman is replaced by a piece of code, the income stream for the American empire vanishes. Guess what happens to the security the US provides when it can no longer afford to pay its soldiers or fuel its ships? This brings us to the sociological impact of the useless dollar. When a currency fails, the social contract fails. People stop working for money that doesn't buy food. They stop respecting the laws of a government that can't provide a stable medium of exchange. We are seeing the balkanization of the West, the breaking up into smaller, self-sufficient units. The secret weapon has acted as a catalyst for this fragmentation. By rendering the global currency useless, the BRICS have forced the world to go local. But local in the West is unprepared, while local in the East is backed by the new financial architecture. Do you understand the disparity? One side has a new system ready to go. The other side is still trying to fix a system that is mathematically broken. Let's look at the velocity of money. In a healthy economy, money moves quickly from hand to hand, creating value. But in 2026, we are seeing stagnation in the dollar and acceleration in the new commodity-linked digital units. People are dumping dollars like a hot potato and hoarding anything that has a physical reality. This is the final run on the Bank of the American Empire. The secret weapon didn't create the fire. The fire was the $34 trillion in debt. The weapon simply opened the windows to create a draft, making the fire spread faster. Why is this important? Because you cannot stop the fire now. You can only decide where you stand relative to the smoke. Think about the reserve currency as a global language. If everyone speaks English, it's easy to do business. But if suddenly 70% of the world decides to speak a new, more efficient language, those who only speak English are left out of the conversation. The mBridge and CIPS systems are the new language of finance. They are more precise, more secure, and more inclusive of the world's majority. The US dollar is becoming a dead language, spoken only by those who are too old or too stubborn to learn the new one. But in economics, if you can't speak the language of the market, you can't eat. Are you learning the new language of hard assets and decentralized finance? Or are you still shouting in a language no one is listening to? The elite in the West know this. Why do you think they are so focused on the Great Reset and you will own nothing and be happy? It is a psychological preparation for the loss of the dollar's power. They want to transition you into a rental economy where you don't need money because you don't own anything anyway. You just have access granted by the state through your CBDC. But the secret weapon of the East offers a different path. You will own real assets and be sovereign. This is the fundamental clash of 2026. It is digital serfdom versus commodity sovereignty. Which side of the secret weapon do you want to be on? To conclude, we must realize that the US dollar didn't just fail. It was replaced by a superior technological and economic model. The mBridge protocol, the commodity loop, and the physical gold settlement have created a new gravity that the dollar cannot escape. We are living through the event horizon of the American century. The secret weapon has been fired, and while the sound hasn't reached everyone yet, the impact has already occurred. The dollar is useless not because it doesn't exist, but because it no longer commands the world's resources. As we move forward into the remainder of 2026, the information blackout will try to hide the scale of this defeat. The AI filters will try to tell you that the new BRICS system is unstable or failing. But look at the charts of physical gold. Look at the trade volume of the mBridge. Look at the empty shelves in the West compared to the rising infrastructure in the East. The secret weapon is visible in every ton of grain and every barrel of oil that bypasses the US banking system. Stay sharp, stay physical, and remember, in a world of digital shadows, the only thing that matters is what you can touch, what you can grow, and what you can defend. The secret weapon has changed the world forever. The dollar is dead. Long live the new reality of hard value. Do you understand the task ahead of you? Good, because the reset is not a future event. It is happening right now, one transaction at a time. The era of the useless dollar has begun. What will you use in its place? The answer to that question will define your future. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and never let the paper blind you to the stone. The global financial map has been redrawn. It's time to find your place on it. I will see you in the next breakdown of our managed reality. Take care of your wealth, and more importantly, take care of your mind. The game has changed. Are you ready to play by the new rules?